Peace, everyone. Nice to share whatever we're sharing. Share a virtual space with you, virtual space in real time. Just a little bit of a warning. Last week, we did go a little bit over the half hour. We might go a little bit over this week. If you need to peace out, feel more than free. And if you want to keep tripping with me, keep tripping. I'm going to try to stay as close to half an hour as possible. And with that in mind, I kind of did some more organizing of my ideas than I normally like to do, because I usually like to really just flow with things. So again, we're going to try to pack a lot in. These are half-hour classes. They're not exhaustive on any aspect of what we're talking about. So grab what you can, and we'll just keep traveling together. So just to recap what we covered last week, we opened up learning about the most basic elements of the mitzvah/practice called Sefirat HaOmer, which translates literally as counting the Omer. We learned what an Omer is. It is a unit of measurement in the Torah. We learned that the original Omer practice was to bring an agricultural offering of an Omer of barley to the temple on the day after Passover. We also learned that there was a separate practice of counting the 49 days between Passover and Shavuot. We learned that initially Shavuot was not focused on the reception of the Torah as it is today, but was instead another day of agricultural offerings, primarily the offering of 2 leavened loaves of bread, i.e. chametz. We learned about the ritualized grain cycle as we moved from matzah in Passover to barley, that's the Omer offering, to leavened bread, that's Shavuot. And we learned that following the destruction of the temple and exile from our land, the rabbis got creative and found ways to continue the mitzvah and mitzvot and observances in a new context by historicizing and mythologizing and internalizing various holidays and practices. This, in our case, resulted, for example, in the transformation of the day of leavened bread offering to the day of the reception of the Torah. As it says in Pirkei Avot, if there is no flour, there is no Torah. This also resulted in the combining of the practices of the agricultural Omer offering of barley and of the day counting into what we now call Sefirat HaOmer. In the Torah, you don't see the term Sefirat HaOmer. You have the Omer offering, and then there's a separate mitzvah, which is the Sefirat, which is the counting of the 7 by 7 weeks. So now we've kind of collapsed those two into and we don't offer the Omer of barley, but we do still count the days between Passover and Shavuot. And in the way we relate to it and in the title, we now call it Sefirat HaOmer, where we count the 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot, between liberation and revelation, between matzah and chametz. And as we said, we concluded last week, somewhere along the line, the Kabbalists added another layer to this practice of counting 49 days by mapping these 49 days onto the 7 lower sefirot. So the whole process of counting became a way to analyze and evolve the self and soul in a more overt and nuanced way. That brings us to this week of our learning together. As you may have noticed or heard Julie mention, this class is subtitled Traveling Through Space, Time, and Soul. We're now going to take a quick look at how the process of Sefirat HaOmer orients us in and carries us through these 3 dimensions. For starters, I just want to point out that this bundle of concepts, space, time, and soul, or in Hebrew, Olam, Shana, Nefesh, is from the last chapter in a book called the Sefirat HaOmer. The Sefirat HaOmer is an ancient book of early Kabbalistic teachings that focuses on the process and power of creation through speech, and particularly how God created the world through the energies of the Hebrew alphabet. Besides the letter mysticism, the book also gets into astrology, angelology, psychobiology, poetics, and various other wormholes, all in under 10 pages. At the end of Sefirat Era, after describing all of the esoteric underpinnings of God's creation, it states that there are three things that bear witness to all of this weird-ish: the world, the stars, and the human being, or space, the world, time, the celestial bodies, which is how we map and how we count time, and soul, the human, olam, shana, nefesh, earth, human, heaven. These are the three dimensions that bear witness or comprise or even create our lived reality. All occurs in space, in time, and in perception. Reality is, in fact, an intersection of these 3 points. And in fact, part of our spiritual work is to bring these 3 dimensions back into oneness and harmony, rather than existing in a splintered world of division and discord. So based on this, we can say that Sefirat HaOmer is a practice of purifying and unifying our experience of these 3 dimensions, and in fact of seeing truly how they all reflect each other in a greater unity. This idea becomes even more relevant when one considers that Mount Sinai, the destination of this journey, remember we're moving from Pesach to Shavuot, from liberation to revelation. So the Omer is the journey that's taking us to the destination of Sinai. And Sinai is described during the revelation of the Torah as being, quote, ashan kulo, completely covered in smoke. And as many have pointed out over the generations, the word ashan is an acronym for space, time, and soul. Olam, Shana, Nefesh. So there is something about the experience of revelation that is connected to, or even contingent on, the unification of these 3 dimensions. One could even say that this is precisely the work of Sefirat HaOmer, unifying our experience within all 3 of these dimensions into a greater tapestry, that we too, like Mount Sinai, must become Ashan Kulo. Space! Where are we? Spatially, mythically, during the period between Passover and Shavuot, between Mitzrayim and Sinai, between liberation and revelation, between matzah and the reintroduction of chametz into our diet. We are, as they say, b'midbar, in the wilderness. We have left our previous life and all of its structures and routines, no matter how confining they may have felt, and are now in the wide open expanse of the wilderness. This is a pathless land. We don't know where the F we are going. We are just being led, and we are following the pillars of fire and cloud. Of course, the wilderness can evoke myriad associations and resonances. For our purposes now, let's just say that the wilderness is a completely open, untamed space, devoid of humanly imposed structure. We are at its mercy, and it is full of wonder and danger. A teacher of mine liked to translate Midbar as the resonant place, based on its shared root with the word dibur, or word. The wilderness is thus the speaking space, which is why we receive the Torah in the wilderness, and why so many prophets and mystics and sages from across traditions have received illumination and communication with the higher realms while in the wilderness. But the wilderness, for those used to living in human civilization, is also a dangerous and disorienting place. Furthermore, the wilderness is the place that prophets go to receive revelation, but human society is where they must return to share the light. So the question becomes, how does one not just survive in the wilderness, but thrive and evolve in order to receive and re-enter the human community in a renewed way, rather than as a howling maniac or mystical narcissist? Time. As mentioned already, on the level of time, we are in the 7 weeks, the 49 days between Passover and Shavuot. This is an exciting time when we are moving from liberation to revelation, from constriction to reception, from subservience to responsibility, from matzah to barley or manna, finally to leavened bread. It is also the onset of spring moving into summer. So the earth too is moving from a place of constriction to one of blossoming and awakening. Why do we not go straight to Sinai to receive the Torah immediately after leaving Mitzrayim? The short answer, we weren't ready. The state we were in that was necessary for initiating the exodus from Egypt was not going to be the same state that we would need to be in order to receive the Torah. We had to grow. We had to change. We had to go through a process. In Mitzrayim, we were slaves. We were suffering. We were reacting. We wanted to get out, to go free. We didn't care where, just not there. This is the state of seeking freedom from a certain situation, freedom from a relationship, freedom from some kind of constriction. Often the thought process does not go deeply into what comes next after such freedom is achieved, mostly because it requires such Herculean effort to break out, to blast off, to liberate yourself from such bondage. This is the energy of wild abandon and radical romanticism that is celebrated on Passover, about which God says in Jeremiah, I remember the chesed of your youth, the love of our engagement, how you followed me into the wilderness, into a land that was not sown. But Shavuot is a different energy. After leaving bondage behind, we finally get to a place where the immediate intoxication of pure freedom has worn off. We're ready to commit ourselves to something greater, a grand project worthy of our freedom. This next stage is called Freedom 2. Freedom to build an equitable society. Freedom to use our time in ways that optimize our experience of life and connection to creation. Freedom for all life forms to achieve their highest potential in the pursuit of a just world. It is on Shavuot at Sinai that we receive the vision, the directions, the instructions to achieve such a higher vision and grand project of world rectification and indeed of world creation. But we have to be in a place that we can hear its call, that we can see its beauty, that we can respond to its demands with faith, joy, discipline, integrity, alacrity, etc. Therefore, counting the Omer for the 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot is meant to help us go through such a process of development and maturation, to move us from being only radical to being also responsible. And when I say responsible, I mean able to respond. Sefirat HaOmer is a practice in vessel building. We got a hit of the pure light on Passover, when we were taken out of the 49th level of impurity and catapulted to the top of the tree, so to speak. We learned that even the lowliest Israelite had greater visions than the prophet Ezekiel at the splitting of the sea. And on Shavuos, again, this light will be revealed to us. But the period in between it is upon us to rebuild our vessels in order to receive, process, and reflect this light back out into the world in a balanced, holy, and righteous way. Too much light can be shattering. The Omer is a practice and process that we go through in order to ensure that we are able to digest the light and extract its nutrients in ways that allow us to engage the world in positive, productive, profound, and loving ways. So on the level of time, we are in between Passover and Shavuot, liberation and revelation, Mitzrayim and Sinai, freedom from and freedom to. Soul. Each of these three levels, space, time, and soul, has a corresponding map. For space, we can look at an actual map to orient ourselves in the wilderness between Egypt and Mount Sinai. For time, we have the calendar that helps us situate us in the seasonal and spiritual cycles that we live through and by. In terms of soul, what is that map? It is the Sefirot. And regarding the Sefirot, they do not only function as topography, but also as vehicle with which to traverse the invisible territory of the soul. So let's look at that map again as we did last week. It is impossible to ever say enough about the Sefirot, so please bear with me as I offer you mere tastes, whiffs, traces, morsels. At the conclusion of these 7 weeks, hopefully you'll have a bit more developed understanding or relationship to the Sefirot, but it will have to evolve bit by bit over time with more questions than answers. So just to review a bit from last week, the tree is a diagram of creation coming into being, whether that's from the Godhead into the world, or on our own microcosmic level, from our own aha moments or epiphanous dream visions down into actualized manifestation. Generally, the tree moves from the more ethereal, up here, into the more materialized realms, down here. Spiritual emanation, up with Keter, the world of Atzilut. Cognitive conception with Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at. Emotional processing and formation with the next 6 Sefirot from Chesed to Guevara, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. And then on to expressive manifestation and reflection in Malchut, the world of Asiya. So we move from the world of Atzilut in Keter, the world of spiritual emanation, to the world of Bria, which is cognitive, conceptual realm with the Chabad Trinity here, into the emotional processing and formation of the world of Yetzirah. That's, you'll notice, Sefer Yetzirah. And then into the world of Asiya in expressive manifestation and reflection. Much of our work, as we said last week, is directed by the Kabbalists to focus on these 7 lower Sefirot, these more emotional, psychological, relational, behavioral levels and qualities of our being. These mirror the 7 days of creation. The upper 6, from Chesed to Yesod, are akin to the 6 days of creation, with all of its movement, transformation, work, and doing. Malchut is akin to Shabbat, whereby creation is crowned through the act of Kiddush, or sanctification, the moment of reflection upon what has been brought into being and the recognition of its inherent holiness just the way it is, an expression of pure being. It is understood that by working on these 7 lower Sefirot, we strengthen and purify our higher order functions, as well as providing a relational and ethical foundation upon which our more rarefied esoteric thinking can rest upon and take root within. On Pesach, we learn that we're taken from the 49th level of impurity, so like 49 levels below this Malchut, and rocketed up to the highest level of the 50th gate of understanding. So from the 49th level of impurity all the way, not just to ground 0, which would be the first level of Tahara, of purity, but actually all the way up to the 50th gate of purity, of Bina, 50th level of understanding. That is what makes Pesach so special and significant. It's a quantum leap. It's just like, you're all the way at the bottom and then you're all the way at the top. Simultaneous, just like whoosh, reversal. That's what makes Pesach so special and significant. God's power is revealed in such an overt and immediate way, but according to the wisdom of the Omer, such a peak experience is not sustainable. We therefore spend the next 49 days processing that initial peak experience and internalizing it in a way that sticks, all in order that we might actually achieve real transformation so that we may then continue the journey to the next level. The Torah is basically our ticket, blueprint, and musical score for that next level, but we need to prepare for it. That is the work and practice of the Omer. So then, after we're catapulted from the lowest level of impurity, the 49th level of impurity, all the way up to the 50th gate of Bina, Pesach, we then start counting the Omer here on Chesed Sheba Chesed, okay? So we go from all the way down to all the way up, and then we do the work of bringing that vision of the peak back down into us. And we, day by day, wind our way down the tree, following the fruit all the way down to its root, until we make our way all the way down, only to be catapulted back up again to the 50th gate of Bina. We'll talk about this more throughout the 7 weeks, but I'll just say, this is the essence of Naaseh V'Nishma. On Pesach, we get a lightning flash view from the peak, almost as in a dream. During the Omer, we follow the path down in order to see all the sights that we missed along the way. On Shavuot, we realize that the peak is present in the very first step of the journey, if that step is taken with mindfulness. We are now in the week of Guevara. Guevara is literally translated as strength, but what kind of strength are we speaking of? We learn in Pirkei Avot, Ezehu Gibor, who is strong, one who conquers their inclination, their appetites, their urges. So this is the kind of strength we're speaking of here. The strength to assert boundaries upon oneself. Not to never enjoy or express oneself, but the ability to express or enjoy oneself in ways that are good, healthy, healing for oneself as well as for others with whom one is in relationship. Chesed is good. Chesed is great. Chesed is the initiator of all good deeds. However, unchecked chesed has enormous shadow capacities. If one is unable to read their energetic dashboard, unchecked chesed can lead to burnout or leave one stranded with an empty tank on the highway of life. Additionally, in terms of how one's actions impact others, unchecked chesed might enable bad habits in others who become accustomed to getting their way all the time. Or unchecked chesed may even begin to encroach upon the personal space and boundaries of the one who is the target of such self-centered expressions of chesed. Chesed, even though it is love, is all I. I feel love. I want to express love. I want to give. Gevura introduces I to thou. Do you feel the same way? Would my expression of love benefit you holistically? Are you open to my offerings of love? Chesed is a moth flying into the flames of love, losing the boundaries between self and other, merging in complete union. Gevura is more like moth meet flame. You guys might like each other, but you're going to have to figure out how to have a sustainable relationship that honors the rights and needs of both of you. Otherwise, you will extinguish each other. It should also be pointed out that chesed is often equated with ahava, love, and gevura is often equated with yirah, fear or awe. Chesed draws one close. Yirah makes one take a step back. Wow, the mysterium tremendum. And as we know, Reshit Chokmah, Yirat Hashem. The beginning of wisdom, Chokhmah,
is yirah, is fear, is awe of the Lord. Love brought us out of our constriction, out of Mitzrayim, out of our enslavement, out of our self, following our beloved into the wilderness and uncertainty. Yirah, Guevara, brings us to Sinai in one piece, ready to receive and integrate the divine light in a righteous and responsible way. So, in these times, which often feel like an infinite expanse of monotony, where it is so hard to tell one day from the next or the last, the simple act of counting each day, of marking the boundary between one day and the next, of reflecting on the unique energy within each unique day and even within each unique moment, this is truly an act of Guevara within the wilderness of the coronavirus. The strength to define our own experience of time. This is an essential teaching of the Torah. The first mitzvah is to start counting the months in Nisan when we leave Mitzrayim. Many people have spoken over the last weeks of the way in which, even if the whole week is a mess or a soup or a blob of time, Shabbos, Shabbat, is an axis around which they are able to anchor and orient themselves, to regain a sense of rhythm and place in time. This is part of what we are doing during Sefirat HaOmer, but it's not every 7 days, it's every single day. By counting the days, we make each day count. And so, as we did last week, in closing, I'll offer just a brief meditation for your own counting of the Omer tonight. And following that brief meditation, I will count the Omer. You're welcome to count along with me. You're welcome to say Amen. I'm doing it for my own practice as well as to model it for those who are not familiar with the practice. And I will be using and directing people to an awesome website, opensiddur.org, where you can find the brachot and cool color-coded ways to count this Sefirat HaOmer, as well as a bunch of other aspects of the liturgy and trippy ideas as well. So in closing, as we move into tonight, last night was Netzach Sheba Gevura, and remember, every week we meet on Mondays. We are meeting on the night of Hod of a particular Sefira, and remember, Hod is acknowledgement, submission, but really acknowledgement and even praise. And of course, the Jewish people are under the name of Yehudah. You will hear that root of Hod in the name of Yehudah. We are praisers. We are acknowledgers of the one, of the intrinsic holiness within all reality we are acknowledgers of the signature of the Creator within the work of creation. A brief meditation for tonight, and then I will count the night. During these strange times, when we may be justifiably allowing ourselves a few more indulgences than normal just to get through the seemingly endless day, what are the areas or indulgences in which you might need to exert a bit more Gevura? Which self-indulgences or self-expressions have crossed over the line or are nearing the line of healthy and responsible? Too much wine? Too much ice cream? Too much social media posting or ranting? Too much screen time for the kids? Too much self-care or self-obsession? What are the responsibilities, whether social, relational, or even work, that you have loosened up on that you are feeling like you want to pick back up again? What are the areas or aspects of your life right now that could benefit from just a bit more Guevara, a show of gentle strength to bring you and your relationships with loved ones, with the world, and with yourself back into balance? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tivanu al Sefirat HaOmer. Hayom Shnayim Asar Yom Shehem Shavua Echad V'chamisha Yamim LaOmer Hod Shebu Gevura. Today is 12 days, which are 1 week and 5 days of the Omer, since we left Mitzrayim, since we left our enslavement. Hod within Guevara. God bless you all. Have fun in the wilderness, but not too much fun. Just enough fun to make it fun, and to make it fantastic, and to make it worth it, and to make it holy, and to bring us to the foot of that magic mountain where we take a big giant hit of Ashan Kulo on 420, which is today. Ashan is Gematria 420. For those who know, Naseh V'Nishma. Peace.